Hello, everyone. Welcome into episode 132 of the Stomp the Bus show. I am your host, Mark Harris, and we've got an interesting show for you. Going to talk about some ASU football stuff to start out as camp is beginning, and then at the end of the show, going to rank all 16 Big 12 teams based on how much pressure they're facing this football season. It's not a power ranking. It is a pressure ranking, and there's a difference, right? So I'll delve into that at the end of the show. You can see what time that starts in the show notes on YouTube and in the podcast description. So that'll be fun. It's kind of a just look into how what the goals for each team are and what expectations are. So kind of an interesting look into that as the season is less than a month away now, especially for Iowa State and Kansas State. It's like 3 weeks away for them. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, remember to follow College Huddle podcast as well. They do great work. So let's dive into this. ASU football practice is underway. I believe they've had 3 practices under their belt so far. And things seem to be going pretty well. Dillingham was critical of his team after the second practice, basically saying like, oh, this would be a fine practice for a team that's supposed to be bad. They didn't have enough passion, going through the motions type stuff. That's going to happen over a course of training camp for probably any team. So I'm glad that there's an emphasis on showing up, like not just showing up to practice, but showing up to compete, to be at your top energy level during practice. I think that's something that you kind of saw, just the juice that this team played with last year. I think that starts on day one. You can't just flip the switch and all of a sudden everyone's playing balls to the wall as opposed to going through the motion. So good stuff there from Dillingham. You can watch some of his press conferences mute, and man, like his eyes, like you can tell that this dude is wired up. So he's got a good, coffee routine, whatever he's doing, man. Like Dan Campbell drinking the giant coffees or whatever. Like, he is amped and ready to go, and that's what you need from your football coach, right? I can't relate to that, honestly, like especially not being a morning person, but you know what? That's why he's coaching and I am podcasting. Anyway, offense, I mean, the first few days, like Jordan Tyson, like that first clip that got showed on whatever, I think it was Wednesday, of him mossing Keith Abney while Ozzy Osbourne plays in the background. Like that is just perfection in video form for me. I mean, when you have Dilly come out and say like, yeah, I'm not here to praise Tyson, I'm here to critique him because he already gets a bunch of praise. Like that's an acknowledgement that like this guy's awesome. Like, I mean, with all the hype that Levitt is getting, it's I feel like Tyson has almost gone under the radar in the sense of like a preview perspective. They're like, oh, they got to replace Scattaboo. They got to, all this and that. Like, how's it? And then it's like, oh, yeah, this Tyson guy's pretty good. It's like, no, like he's slated to be the number 1 wide receiver off the board. Like, there is a realistic chance he could be a top 10 overall pick. And there aren't like major weaknesses in his game. He's just a great, like, jump ball guy, great gaining separation, just a natural wide receiver. And I'm so excited to watch him play this year and just him and Levitt build on the connection they already have. And apparently, so Tyson, I mean, but Tyson looking good, like that's not really a surprise. Jaron Hamilton, wide receiver transfer from Alabama, continuing to kick ass at camp, is such an X factor for this team. We don't know if he'll start. There's still Malik McClain and then Fresno State transfer wideout Jalen Moss. But it's just looking like Hamilton is just making it a case that like he needs to be on the field. His deep threat ability is just such a weapon for this team. Like as good as Tyson was, and he did have some deep play moments, and there were a few moments earlier in the year where Levitt just overthrew him. But if you can have Hamilton out there, and I mean the defenses are going to key in on Tyson, and so that's going to leave some one-on-ones for Hamilton. And I mean, I cannot wait for the first deep shot between Levitt and Hamilton this year. Like that's going to be so fun. And Dillingham said he put on 17 pounds this off season. I'm always like, okay, is that a good thing? Like when guys gain weight, like it's on the lines of scrimmage, it's very obvious. Like, yes, it's good that they got bigger. When it's people whose speed is a huge part of their game, it's a little more like, okay, how is that going to affect them? I trust the coaching staff and the weight staff, not weight staff, training staff with Coach Conley. So I'm not, I think that him gaining 17 pounds is a good thing. And hopefully it helps him be a more physical wide receiver, get past some press coverage. So yeah, I mean, defense looks like it's, again, I'm not at practice. I'm just gleaning what I've seen from reports. Defense seems like it's gelling well. I mean, when you have all these guys returning, it's just like there's a lot of known quantities there. And then you add in the two secondary guys that have played well is Kendrick Breedlove and then Boogie Wilson transferring in from Purdue and Washington State, respectively. Breedlove led Purdue in picks last year, recently had a pick 6 in practice, and Boogie Wilson just has appeared to hit the ground running, especially with Xavier Alford and Ghost Rouser both sidelined right now with minor injuries. So, that's looking good. Offensive line, no big revelations there so far. And then, I mean, there's not going to be one running back that replaces Scatterboo, but it sure seems like Kanye Udo, Kyson Brown, and Rayleigh Brown are picking up right where they left off. ASU Instagram, they shared a video of Levitt connecting with Kanye Udo on a wheel route on Friday, and it was spectacular. It was absolutely spectacular. Perfect throw, great play call. Udo did a great job to avoid defenders and make it to the end zone. Like, it's all three of those guys have something to offer in different ways, and if they can all catch out of the backfield too, like it's just so much for opposing defenses to account for. And I'll tell you what, like I'm just so excited to watch this offense when they get on the field. And I mean, there's just a lot of firepower. And I haven't even mentioned the tight ends, which are a great position group as well. So I think things seem to be going smoothly at camp so far. I want to get into some statements, quotes by Dillingham. I mentioned him, kind of criticizing his team on Thursday for not having enough passion. That's it's good that he's making them stay sharp, right? He's got some other, ideas. And I think the thing that kind of stood out and got the most attention nationally is the idea that ASU is on a mission to fundraise $15 million over the next 5 months for an permanent indoor practice facility that will also be used as a tailgating location on game days, with Dillingham comparing the idea to the 16th hole of the Waste Management. So first of all, there's two facets to this. The idea of killing two birds with one stone by having a permanent practice facility that also doubles as a tailgating location is fantastic, because while there is space in the kind of area around the stadiums at ASU, it's still a lot of stuff seems to be tied up. Like the golf course, the old Karsten golf course. I don't know what's going on there. I'm obviously on one side there are the high-rise developments that are getting built, but the west side of it, closer to the stadium, is a little more just barren. So maybe that should be an option. I don't know. And then there's the old Packard Field. Those would be great places to go, but for whatever reason, they're kind of just tied up. So with that in mind, I think it's good to have a great location for fans to chill, escape the heat, because like the first half of every ASU football season, like it's freaking hot. And that is something that will sway people against tailgating outside, especially if there's no grass area and there's very little tailgating on a hot parking lot. Like I'd rather just be at a bar watching games beforehand. That's just me. But it's great to just have the two birds just knock out both of these needs in one building. And I think that's great. Hopefully, I think he was saying how the fundraising goal is going well. I like where that goes. I don't know how this like gets divvied up with like, do people donate to the NIL instead of the fundraising thing? Do they donate to the fundraising thing instead of NIL? I don't have a large chunk of money to donate to either, so it's not my issue. But it'll be interesting to see how Graham Rossini kind of navigates that, and especially with new or potential new NIL rulings. Who knows how that's even going to play out in the future? So, it seems like this has been something they've thought about, and hopefully, they can generate the funds to make that a reality for the new practice facility. Comparing it to the 16th hole of the Waste Management. So it's not actually like you can't really have that. I mean, unless you want the whole place to smell like booze when you're practicing on a Wednesday after a home game. It can. I think his idea is like it'll be like just a party vibe, and maybe a lesser version of the 16th hole. So I like that ASU is one of these schools, and this is something that is maybe more of just a Midwestern Southern thing. Growing up on the West Coast and just following the Pac-12 for my whole life, it wasn't really something that was a thing for me. Was noticing how like a lot of schools don't sell alcohol at their at their games and at their sporting events. And personally, I think it's a bad idea to not sell alcohol. I get that people can be rowdy. I get it. But this is college sports. Like there is a rowdiness element to it. And I mean, that's just my opinion. People can disagree, but I imagine there will be opportunities in this potential practice facility / tailgating location where you can sell alcohol there too. And that's a good way for ASU to maybe repay or pay back whatever like loans it uses for building it or anything, or just a potential money-making opportunity. So anyway, to wrap up this thought, like this is a good idea, and it's using the space that's available to knock out two different needs for the football tailgating location. So I like that. Yeah, he had some quotes about, what their goals are heading into camp. It's a lot of the same stuff from Dillingham. He did mention, and this was prior to practice starting, about how their camaraderie is such a big deal and for this team, and how it probably affects close games. I think I agree. It's not the only thing, obviously, like you have to execute as well, but I think that's something that could it probably won an extra game for ASU this past year. And if you keep that same, togetherness, like it could be the difference in another win in 2025. So I'm glad that Dillingham's keying in on that. I'm glad he has the schematic stuff down, or not down. Obviously, like he is knowledgeable in the schematic aspects of the game and the soft aspects of the game, right? Like camaraderie, passion, all these things that as a cynical as a cynical guy, I guess I could call myself, like, I think a lot of these, motivational sayings and mantras can be kind of cheesy and hokey. However, I am not a college football player who has to buy into one mission to get the job done, right? I'm just a fan. I'm not playing. And so I think for the team itself, doubling down on camaraderie and, all these like coach euphemisms and all that stuff, like, I think it works with this group. And, he has a group of players that, like, evidenced by all the players that are coming back, right? Like, there is a buy-in to the way that he's doing things. So from all of that aspect, it seems like they're pointed in the right direction. And then there was one more quote that I wanted to mention. Well, there was an interesting quote from Marcus Arroyo just talking about how they're studying like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, just to really fine tune a lot of the details of the game. And it really seems like Levitt is just very advanced in his like football knowledge. I'm sure there will be times where he's kind of fooled by some defenses out there, and this kind of came up last year before the BYU game when he was like talking about like how he like has the answers to the defense or something. I mean, if he can just continue to get better at the pre-play recognition of what's going on, like, sky's the limit for him, And I'm not going to dive in too much with Levitt right now, just because it's been 3 practices. He's more or less a known commodity, but it's a good thing to see if the offensive coordinator just has so much trust in him and really likes the off the field work that he's been getting done. So that is good to see. One last thing from pre-camp practice stuff is Dillingham was talking about the Northern Arizona game. I'm trying to find the quote right now because I want to make sure it is absolutely correct. Okay, hold on. Obviously, getting people out there for the game. I have a little bit of just critique isn't the right word, but I think that, like, here it is. Okay, so this is from Chris Cartman's Twitter. Dillingham is imploring fans to show up in big numbers for the NAU game on August 30th. His quote is, "Go look at any good football program and go look at week 1, and you're going to see sold out crowds or 85% capacity." So he's basically, I don't want to say calling out, but he's like really laying the groundwork of like, hey guys, like let's make sure that this is a visibly full stadium for Northern Arizona in week 1. I have a few. Okay, so obviously, like if you're an ASU fan, you should go to this game if you're in the Valley and capable of going. And I think, like, I agree with that message. This team does deserve a full stadium for them, and yeah, I mean, I think it does help that like the FCS opponent you're playing is Northern Arizona because there's just some NAU alums in the Valley. So I like that he's getting the groundwork set up for that. Like, hey, like let's make this a big deal. Let's show it for game 1. I was going to tweet this out. I'm glad I didn't now, but I disagree with this notion that he has that like if you're a high level program, then by as a downstream effect of that, your fans are selling out or showing up at 85% capacity for the FCS opponent in week 1. I just don't buy that. I'm sorry. Like, I just don't agree with that. And really what I don't agree with is using the FCS week 1 opponent as the measuring stick of this is how passionate our fan base is. I just don't agree with that. I mean, tickets, like, there's a lot of expenses in life. For ASU, it's going to be 105 degrees at kickoff, most likely, or close to it. And it is an FCS opponent. It is literally an opponent that is not on the same level as you. So, of course, like, I'm not saying don't show up. Like, I won't show up, but that's because I'm going to be out of town that weekend anyway for a friend's bachelor party. But I'll watch the game, and like, if I was free that weekend, I would be going to that game. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm saying show up to that game. This is just a little side note that I have. I just don't think that, like, like, not showing up to that game means you're not, like, serious. It's like, I don't know. Like, it is the FCS game. I think that I just don't buy that. Like, when Alabama hosts Bethune-Cookman or whatever, the stadium, it's probably like 75% full. It's probably not 100% full. And I just don't think that using the FCS opponent is like, oh, this is actually how passionate your fan base is. I think if the real issue with the ASU fans was last year against UCF, that is something that, like, I'm like, yep, I'm not going to defend the ASU fan base at all in that sense, because that was like 75% full. That was after ASU beat Oklahoma State. I think they were 7-2. And sure, like, UCF is not like a traditional conference rival, but they're in your conference now. And like, now they're on the same plane as you in terms of being in the same conference. So I think, like, if ASU's like has a good record and fans don't show up for the game when they host Houston at, what I think is like October 25th, like, that is a big issue. But using that argument for FCS NAU, I just don't really agree with that. But whatever, that's a side note. And I did see some Iowa State fan being like, oh, well, Iowa State, we have great capacity all the time for any opponent that we play. It's like, okay, cool, bro. How did that work out when ASU faced Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game? How did that work out? How did the game when Iowa State hosted Northern Illinois, how did that work out for you guys? Cool. Like, congrats on showing up for FCS opponents when it's the nicest weather of the year in Iowa and it's the opposite in Arizona. I mean, with that type of fan support, you would think that Iowa State would have tons of 10-win seasons. And instead of just having their first 10-win season ever last year, you'd think they would have one conference championship in the Big 12. But I digress. So anyway, that's just a side note. But even through my jaded, cynical viewpoint, you should still definitely go see ASU. And I mean, honestly, to see just the depth of the offensive roster, I think that they're going to try to get a lot of guys involved, and get the season rolling on a good front. And honestly, if you base it on, like, with how they played against Wyoming last year, like, that was outstanding. I mean, they completely kicked their ass. So I think that they'll be ready to go. I just disagree with this idea that, like, oh, like, this is the mark that shows you're a good program. I just don't agree with that. But anyway, that's a small point. All right. Some other things to mention. Reese Davis stopped by, interviewed Kenny Dillingham, played some video games at the facility. That was a fun little video. Based on, what Reese was tweeting about, like, just good vibes, and people seem to like Dillingham, and so that's good. I'll mention this quickly. Last Sunday, Dillingham tweeted out basically like, hey, like, let's get, like, he was imploring, like, Elon Musk to support the program, and we could drive a Cybertruck into the stadium. I quote tweeted that with "Let's Not," and so you can see his deleted tweet quote tweeted by me on the Stomp the Bus account. There's no reason to really dive into this because it was deleted within probably 35 minutes. But let's not invite controversial figures into the program as a whole. Now you can say, oh, maybe Elon Musk shouldn't be controversial, all this, but he is a lightning rod with polarizing opinions on all sides in American life and American political life. So there's zero benefit of having him be involved in the program. I just think that's awful. And I'm glad that it was corrected quickly because that could have really spiraled out of control if that tweet had stayed in the sun for longer than that. So crisis averted, and Dillingham is a smart guy. I would hope that he would learn from that. All right. Anyway, had to mention that. Shrine Bowl stuff came out. ASU had 15 guys on the Shrine Bowl watch list. A lot of the guys you would expect. No Ben Coleman on the list, which I thought was interesting, and then also no Kyle Scott. I think Kyle Scott's pretty good at right guard, and Ben Coleman had a pretty good year last year. Is relatively highly touted. So interesting that those guys didn't get recognition, I guess I should say. No Jordan Crook either. So there are some guys who didn't get listed on, and it's 1,000 players. And at first when I saw ASU had 15 guys, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then I see Texas Tech has 22 guys. Now, some of that could be because the Texas Tech hype machine media cycle from this past offseason is well known to everyone. So maybe some of their lesser known players get more hype in this one Shrine Bowl 1,000, but nice to see some guys get recognized. It's 1,000 players. So it's not saying all these guys will get drafted, but it's kind of saying hey, if they really play well, then they could up their status. So I have one more football thing to go over after this, but I do want to shout out Eric Allen, former ASU cornerback, going into the Hall of Fame on Saturday today. He shouted out ASU in his acceptance speech. And, I'm not going to say he was at ASU before I was born. Most of his pro career was before I was 7 years old. So I don't have any Eric Allen takes other than it's, again, it's awesome to have a sixth ASU football player into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That's just puts you in a different class as a program. I think in terms of recognition, it doesn't actually change fundamentally what ASU is as a program, but it's just a cool recognition. And his 50, I think he had, I'm looking at his stats right now. So 54 career picks. He had 6 interceptions his second to last year in the NFL, returned 3 of those for touchdowns. He's the only NFL player with 2 different seasons of 3 or more pick sixes. That's really impressive, and it happened 7 years apart, 93 in Philly in 2000. 8 interceptions his second year in the league. He has 3 seasons with at least 6 interceptions and 5 seasons. 6 seasons with at least 5 interceptions. So this guy is just a ball hawk, a great part of the 86 Rose Bowl team. Really cool that you have ASU teammates from that team in the Hall of Fame, and Randall McDaniel and Eric Allen. And, Terrell Suggs should be coming up pretty soon. So that'll be ASU's 7th Hall of Famer. And then Darren Woodson seems to be kind of on the borderline, but I think he'll get in. I think Darren Woodson is just has a higher profile in the football mind of America, the general football consciousness, as opposed to Eric Allen. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Eric Allen was better than it's before my time, but just by Darren Woodson being on those Cowboys teams, and being a worthy Hall of Fame candidate as well, we'll see when he potentially enters the Hall of Fame. But there's a decent chance within the next 3 years that ASU has 8 players in the Hall of Fame. And that would just be really cool. Like it doesn't add any wins to the win column or anything, but it's just a cool honor for those guys and makes the program look good. After Darren Woodson potentially gets in, then it'll be a long wait. Then you're basically because you're basically hoping it's Brandon Ayuk next, and I don't think Brandon Ayuk's going to make the NFL Hall of Fame. But it's not impossible. He certainly has the talent, but I would say it's unlikely. So anyway, shout out to Eric Allen. Good job. Pretty cool to just get ASU getting some spotlight with him going into the NFL Hall of Fame. Okay, I'm going to touch on some basketball stuff and baseball stuff quickly. So baseball, let me share this tweet. But long story short, ASU's baseball transfer class is in really good shape. As of hold on. Okay. As of July 29th, they had the 11th best transfer portal class. And every single team ahead of them, or not every single team, all but 2 teams ahead of them are from the SEC. It's only Florida State and Virginia. And those are like high-level baseball schools from the ACC. So ASU ahead of, some big, LSU, Texas A&M, Florida, Texas, like some Arkansas, some high-level baseball schools. They are doing really well in the portal. I'm not going to go over every single portal edition. I think I've done a lot of that, but like so far the adding the full scholarships for the whole team has paid off well for Graham Rossini and Willie Bloomquist this offseason. And it's not about sure, it'd be great to be where Georgia is and have the number 1 baseball transfer portal class, but it's still, you lost a lot of guys to the draft, right? There's no Isaiah Jackson, there's no Brandon Compton, etc., Ben Jacobs. But replenishing the roster and, being among the current best programs in the game is a really good spot for ASU. And if you look at the rest of the list, there's only one other Big 12 team, and that would be Kansas State at number 24 right there. So it's an opportunity to really level up in the Big 12 conference after barely making the NCAA tournament last year. All right, I'm going to switch over to basketball real quick. ASU added another player, Jovan Icitovic from Serbia. He is a forward. Decent highlights according to the ASU, social posts. I don't have any real take. I think it's good that ASU men's basketball has another just solid player. And I'm a sports story from July 11th, written by Tyler Drake. And it's basically just a rundown of the whole roster. This is before Jovan Icitovic was added. Interestingly, ASU now has guys from, I believe, 7 different countries. So I believe all of the guards are American. And then, so you have America. I believe VJ Wallace is Canadian. I could be wrong. So that's 2. Mukeba's from Belgium. 3. Andrija Grbrovic is from Montenegro. That's 4. Santiago Toure is Argentina. And then you got the 2 7-footers from Senegal. And then Icitovic. So that's 7 countries. Like Hurley is spanning the globe to get talent. And I will say, I don't know if I've mentioned really much about getting this Diop guy and then Salon as well as a big body. Like that actually does, it kind of raises the floor for me with ASU men's basketball. Not like a lot, but I mean, earlier this offseason, I was really down on like the ASU men's basketball program. I still am, but when you're getting these, I'll say it, like lottery tickets from overseas, who like there's no, we don't really know what like these guys can contribute, but their unknown is better than the known of what the previous roster was. So I like that. I like that Hurley's scouring the globe to add talent in what is a hot seat year for him. So good to see that. And some schedule announcements with ASU men's basketball. We knew they were playing Gonzaga already. That's going to be on Friday, November 14th. Good night for a game against Gonzaga. Have it on a Friday night. Like don't have it on like a Tuesday night when fans aren't interested. Have it on a Friday night. I like that. They are hosting Oregon State, a little Pac-12 reunion, December 21st, so right before Christmas. You'll probably have a decent amount of Beaver fans there. That should be a fun game. I think ASU should continue to host these former Pac-12 schools that, we know that ASU didn't really want to leave the Pac-12 at all. So I like that they're reuniting with the Beavers here, and that should be not an impossible thing to win either. And then we know that ASU is in the Maui Invitational with a lot of former Pac-12 schools as well. They will be playing Texas on November 24th at the Lahaina Civic Center. So that'll be an interesting showdown as well. Don't have any sort of knowledge about what Texas basketball is supposed to be, but this is an opportunity to just pick up a good win and in a Maui Invitational. That'll be something that a lot of people are watching, and maybe get some revenge for the Peach Bowl. Take that, Texas basketball. So there we go. I think that wraps up most of the stuff I want to talk about before ranking Big 12 teams by pressure. But I stumbled across an interesting article from On3 that I think portends well for ASU in the future if some metrics end up holding up throughout the season. So this is from On3 earlier this week, and it is okay. Here we go. 5 college football teams projected as favorites in every 2025 regular season game. Those 5 teams are Arizona State, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. All 5 of those teams, according to Brad Powers of the Bet the Board podcast, according to his metrics, ASU, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Ohio State are favored to win all 5 of their, are favored to win all 12 of their regular season games, according to Brad Powers. So based on power ratings from Brad Powers of the Board podcast, those 5 programs enter the 2025 season as projected favorites in each of their 12 regular season games. The actual point spreads for every game are not available. Also, projections can and will change over the course of the season based on actual results. So Dev's into Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Clemson, and then the ASU section is interesting. While ASU is favored in every game, the Sun Devils don't have much margin of error. Arizona State is less than a 1-score favorite in 6 games. At Baylor, favored by 1. Home versus TCU, favored by 6.5. At Utah, favored by 1. Home versus Texas Tech, favored by 5.5. At Iowa State, favored by 2. And at Colorado, favored by 8 on November 22nd. So that means the other 6 games, ASU is at least favored by 9 or more points. Interestingly, that includes the Mississippi State game. I know that Mississippi State is bad. It's interesting that according to this metric, ASU is a 2-score favorite in that game. And I also think that I don't want to say it's disingenuous the way this is written, but being a minus 1 point favorite at Baylor and Utah, and then a 2-point favorite at Iowa State, That's much different than being a 6.5-point home favorite, 5.5-point home favorite, and 8-point road favorite at Colorado. Like when you're only favored by a point or 2 points, that is much closer to a coin flip type of game. Whereas if you're favored at home by 6.5 points versus TCU, 5.5 points by Texas Tech, like sure, you're not favored by 10 points, but those are still significant margins. And both of those lines indicate that ASU would be favored over those two schools on a neutral field as well. And then being an 8-point road favorite against a Colorado team that's supposed to be decent, I mean, that's a pretty significant designation. So sure, like ASU doesn't have as many double-digit favorites entering the year. I mean, look, Ohio State has 3 games versus Texas, Penn State, and Michigan where they're not 10-point favorites. Notre Dame, only 2 games, Texas A&M and at Miami, that are not double-digit favorites for them. Same with Georgia. Georgia is at least a 2-touchdown favorite in 7 games, touchdown favorite in every game other than at home versus Bama and home versus Texas. Clemson is less than a 10-point favorite in only 3 games at Louisville, at Georgia Tech, and then hosting LSU. So, they expect those teams to have a few more blowouts. But I still think it is very notable that ASU is a favorite in every single game. And let's say all of that goes to chalk. That means that ASU would win by a touchdown or 3 points against Texas Tech, TCU, beat Colorado by a touchdown. And then let's say they go 1-2 with the at Baylor, at Utah, at Iowa State trio. That's still a 10-2 season, according to Brad Powers, and that would be good for ASU. Like I think any circumstance, like I don't really care how the 10-2 comes to be a hypothetical potential 10-2 regular season finish for ASU. Like if you get to that and whatever tiebreakers they keep you out of the Big 12 championship game, fine, that's fine. Like get to 10-2. So based on these projections, ASU is in good shape. And there's an interesting blurb at the end of the year. So last year, Florida State, Oklahoma State, and Utah were projected to be favored in 11 games. They were all bad. However, before the 2023 season, the 5 schools projected to be a favorite in every game. So 5 in 2023, 2 years ago, just like this year. The 5 schools projected to be a favorite in every game all nearly ran the table in the regular seasons. Alabama, Georgia, Louisville, Michigan, and Washington were all projected to be favored in each game. Their regular season records: Alabama 11-1, Georgia 12-0, Louisville 10-2, Michigan 12-0, Washington 12-0, and Washington and Michigan played in the Natty. The one that sticks out is Louisville because they had kind of an under-the-radar good year that year. But remember, that was the team that Florida State beat in the ACC championship game. And according to some, Florida State didn't look quite as good as that game. But that was who they beat. And, look, I think ASU and Louisville are very comparable in terms of overall program. 10-2, like that's good. And obviously, like I've made some references to how this ASU team can be similar to the Washington team that went 12-0. Both teams enter their respective seasons favored in every game, according to Brad Powers. So I shared this article on the Stomp the Bus Twitter page at Stomp the Bus Pod on X earlier this past week, but I do think it's interesting that they're in the mix with Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, and Ohio State. I said Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame. They're in the mix with them. as being favored in all 12 regular season games entering the season. So the talent, the experience, the coaching is all, coming together in whatever metric that Brad Powers is using. And it's spitting out that, like, okay, this team should, like, being a slight favorite at Utah, that surprised me. That really did. More than even at Baylor and at TCU. And I'm also kind of surprised that, according to this metric, ASU is a 5.5-point home favorite versus Texas Tech, just because they have so much talent. The TCU one looks pretty normal, and then at Colorado, -8, kind of in that same boat as well. But just an interesting article. This was written by Brett McMurphy on July 29th. So check that one out on 3. All right, time to switch over to the main event of the show. I can't believe it took 45 minutes to get here, but I had a decent amount of stuff to touch on. This is what happens when you procrastinate and get episodes out super late. There's a lot of stuff you gotta wait to, but I'm going to switch to a different tab and share the tier maker list that I created, where I am going to rank all 16 Big 12 teams based off the pressure that they face entering the 2025 season. So you'll see here, I have 6 categories. And what you'll find when I rank these teams is, it's like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's not a power ranking, right? It's not, UCF at the bottom, and it's not a projected order of finish in the standings. It is the pressure that each team faces. And there's a lot of crossover, I guess, within the power rankings versus my pressure rankings. But I think as we go through the exercise, you'll see that there's a difference. So I have all the teams scheduled in the queue, and let's run through the each designation. Tangible improvement is required. This means for these teams, they need to win more games than they did last year. They need to show real level improvement. Number 2, compete for Big 12 title and finish ranked. I think if listeners of the show can guess one program that will be on this list, but it's basically of, hey, like, you need to be in the mix at the end of the year. Maybe, you don't 100% have to win the Big 12, but you have to be very much in the mix at the end of the year. Win to save your job. This is less about being in the mix at the end of the year. This is like, hey, you need to just not be embarrassing. There's definitely a few schools that fit into that. This one is, need to stay good. And look, I haven't been through every team's message boards, but for these teams, it's like, hey, just keep the good vibes rolling, stay good. Don't fall on your face this year, but you have some talent, stay good. Get to a bowl game. Few schools fall into this one. You don't need to be competing for the conference championship. Maybe there's a pathway that exists for that, but just get to a bowl game, make some real improvements. And then bottom, no real pressure. For a variety of reasons, these teams, most reasonable fans aren't going to be super pissed off if it's not a 8-win season or something. So let's get this going. I wish I could reorganize. Oh, okay. I'll put ASU in the middle before we get started. Let's move. Okay. I don't know why. I wish I had ordered these in a different way, but oh well. Okay. The order is the order. Let's get going. So Oklahoma State. This is pretty simple. Like, Mike Gundy, you can't have another bad year. This is there in the win to save your job category. Absolutely. Last year for Oklahoma State was bad. And I know there's this sentiment out there of well, Mike Gundy, when you can't count him out. It's like, okay, like, maybe, but I don't think this team's going to be very good. So, just because the trend happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to continue. So that's where Oklahoma State is. I think if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you're definitely like, okay, let's see something here, Gundy. So that's where I got the Cowboys. Houston. I think some people could put them in the no pressure category. I think that because of how well their defense played, particularly at the end of last year, really throughout the entire season, honestly. The addition of Connor Wegman at quarterback, who at least has some pedigree, and then the fact that they have Willie Fritz as a head coach, who's a proven, just pretty good coach. I think that if you're a Houston fan, you want. I believe they went 4-8 last year. They just got to win 2 more games. So I think for them, it's win to get to a bowl game. Like we have the 5-star quarterback Keyshawn Henderson in the background, and for them, it's like, hey, let's get to a bowl game. It's possible. Texas Tech, I should have waited for this, but for them, they have the most pressure, I think, of any school in the conference, and it is tangible improvement is required. We know how much money they spent. Well, we don't know exactly how much money, but we know that they spent a lot of money to improve their roster. They have on paper the best defensive line in the conference. They have a decent quarterback. They have some good offensive players, good linebackers, a solid enough coach. I don't think Joey McGuire is bad. And they went 8-4 last year. I believe their first 6-3 conference record in a long time. I don't know, like some weird. They achieved like a legitimate goal by getting to 6-3 last year, and now with all the money from Cody Campbell, I believe there was a report that like they need to get to 10-2. Like that is the threshold for success. When that is being openly said, you need to get to 10-2. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on Texas Tech. I believe the most of any school in the conference. So we got Texas Tech number 1. Colorado. I think they're in the no real pressure zone. It's kind of tough to expect from Colorado what they're going to be this year. I just don't think that. I think with Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders and the other Sanders brothers gone, I think that it's just kind of like, okay, let's just be decent. But there's the hanging specter of Deion's health, which he said won't be an issue this year, but you never know. And I just think that it's I just don't know if you're a Colorado fan. Like you're probably just hoping to go just be like pretty good this year. But if they go 5-7, are people going to be freaking out? I don't know. And another reason there's no real pressure on Colorado, in my opinion, is like the whole like media frenzy around them. It seems so much more muted now that Shedeur and Travis Hunter are gone. And a lot of that attention is now being diverted to Bill Belichick at North Carolina. He is the new flavor of the month of the unconventional college hire going to a mid-level program. So a lot of that attention is going to be in Chapel Hill. I think Colorado is really under the radar this year. And who knows how that'll play out. I think they have some decent quarterback options. Got a good left tackle in Jordan Seaton. But it's just kind of, in my opinion, just kind of the no real pressure zone. I'm going to put Baylor in the need to stay good category. I was going over that between need to compete for Big 12 title and finish ranked. I'm going to put Baylor in the need to stay good. I think if they go like 8-4, 7-5 again, I doubt that Aranda gets let go if that happens. But at this point last year, like he was on the hot seat. And so if something bad happens, if the defense doesn't improve, then the pressure really mounts up. But I think they have enough talent, especially offensive talent, to the point where like they should stay good, and I believe they will stay good. So there's that. BYU, they would have been a lot higher on this list, but when you have a quarterback who violates the honor code and transfers, in the offseason right before training camp, and you don't really know who your quarterback's going to be, I think they're in the no real pressure zone. They have a good roster, And so I think maybe some BYU fans are, really expecting this team to compete for the conference championship, and they well might, right? Like they well might. They have talent. They, bring back Glasker. They bring back Kelly in the linebacker core, LJ Martin at running back. Like they bring back their defensive coordinator. They're going to be a salty team no matter what. I just don't think that. I think with the Retzlaff news, and we can debate about how good Retzlaff actually was, but he was a competent power four / power five, whatever you want to call it. He was a competent quarterback at that level, no matter what. Like, he wasn't as good as all the hype, but he was also good enough to be a solid quarterback. And when you lose that, that just dampens the expectations. It just has to, naturally. The Arizona State Sun Devils. This one is very simple to me. Compete for Big 12 title and finish ranked. I mentioned how 9-3 is the probably low end, lowest possible or worst possible record for success. And that would be if ASU goes 9-3, then they will be accomplishing compete for Big 12 title and finish ranked. I do not think ASU has the most pressure. I mean, maybe some Sun Devil fans think ASU has the most pressure among Big 12 teams. I don't agree. I think because of Texas Tech, there's so much on the line. And Texas Tech has not accomplished what ASU did. Like, ASU has the Big 12 championship from last year in its back pocket. Like, it is official. It happened. Like, they have that in their back pocket. Like, so now the pressure is like, okay, can you maintain it? Can you have another good season? But at least you've had the good season that Texas Tech is aiming for. And so there's definitely pressure. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if they go 7-5 this year, like, then they didn't live up to the hype. But I just don't think that it's quite at the level of Texas Tech. Iowa State, I'm going to put them in the need to stay good category. I think a lot of people were kind of more down on Iowa State as like a conference championship contender. When you lose both 1,000-yard wide receivers, you lose some guys on defense and then offensive linemen, like, that is something to replace. They do bring back their quarterback and they have a good coach. But I think Iowa State's more in the need to stay good category. Kansas, very simple. Get to a bowl game. Last year was a disappointment. Maybe not in terms of how they played on a down-to-down basis, but in finishing 5-7, like, it was a disappointment. This time last year, they were a conference championship contender, and that didn't happen. You got Lance Leipold. You got Jalen Daniels in his final year. For them, new stadium, get to a bowl game. I think that's fair for Kansas. Cincinnati, very simple. Scott Satterfield. Next with you. Scott Satterfield needs to probably can't just go 6-6. He probably has to get to 7-5 or better to save his job. They have a decent quarterback. They have some decent, they have a good tight end. Dante Corleone on the defensive line. Not an untalented team, but it has to all come together for the Bearcats. U of A. Yeah, Brent Brennan. In some ways, they have more pressure than ASU. In some ways, they don't. Brent Brennan almost got canned last year, and he made it to the offseason and is going to have a second year, but there needs to be real improvement in Tucson for that regime or that coaching staff to continue. I think all three of these teams in the win to save your job category, there's legit pressure on all of them. And I imagine they all probably need to reach a bowl game to silence the Wolves. And for Satterfield's case, that may not even be enough. Who knows? Kansas State, I'm going to put them in the same category as ASU in the compete for Big 12 title and finish ranked bin. Kansas State, according to a lot of sports books, metrics, they're kind of the favorite in the Big 12. And they have a lot of guys returning on defense. They did lose some players, and they lost DJ Giddens and some of their defensive backs. Their left tackle transferred to Washington. So I'm not quite as high on K-State as some other teams in this league, but they have enough of a background. They have enough of a track record. They have talented quarterback in Avery Johnson, where I think the fan base is like, yeah, let's do better than 8-4, which can happen. But and I think another thing for them is like under the Kleiman era, you want it to keep going as staying as like one of the better teams in the conference, which I think Kansas State is regarded as. But last year they kind of fell back a little bit. And if you continue to stay at that level, then you become more of an afterthought as opposed to being one of the top 10 teams in the conference. So I put Kansas State in the same bin as ASU. I think the team in the front has the most pressure of any team in the list or in their respective category. So like, I think ASU has more pressure than Kansas State. And same order for when to say your job with Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Cincinnati. So that's kind of how I'm ranking them. TCU, I'm going to put them in the need to stay good. They lose their wide receivers, but they return Josh Hoover. You still have Sonny Dykes. They were a good team. They won 9 games last year. Good offense. Definitely a dark horse conference contender. I think a lot of the same things I said about Baylor applies to them. I think Baylor, there's a little bit more pressure just because I believe Sawyer Robertson is seen as like a better quarterback than Josh Hoover. And also, I think that Dave Aranda's job is more on the line than Sonny Dykes's. Now, granted, if TCU goes 4-8, then that's a different discussion. But I think that Dykes just has more of a – there haven't been as many bad seasons, and he still has the national championship game appearance on his record. So I would put Baylor, TCU, Iowa State in the need to stay good in that order. Let's go to UCF. No real pressure. I mean, I'm going to put UCF and then West Virginia as well in the no real pressure, just because they have new coaches, right? Or retread coaches, I guess, but new coaching regimes with Rich Rod coming back and Scott Frost coming back. So you can order – I guess I'll put West Virginia ahead of UCF because I think people expect West Virginia to be a little bit better. But, you know, new coaches coming in, revamped rosters, those two teams have the least amount of pressure, in my opinion. And then Utah, a team that had a lot of pressure last year, I put them in the same bin as Texas Tech because there is smoke that this could be Kyle Whittingham's last year. And their fan base talked a ton of trash online about, oh, we're better than the Big 12. Then they go 5-7. There's that aspect of it being better. You bring in Beck and Devin Dampier from New Mexico to revamp the offense. You have at least one first-round offensive tackle and potentially 2 offensive tackles that could get drafted in the first round. And I don't think Utah has to compete for the conference championship or has to like play in the Big 12 championship game, but they like if they need to go 8-4 or better, in my opinion, for this to be considered a successful year, because they do have some talent. They have a quarterback who is a really proven runner. They have some defensive talent as well. And there's the pressure of this could be Whittingham's last year. We need to send him out on a good note, along with the pressure I mentioned of, you know, our fans. And I don't know how real this is, but like it gets more real when you have Mark Harlan criticizing the Big 12 refs after the BYU game last year. There's been some external groups that have, you know, really talked about how good Utah is, and then they fall flat. So there's pressure to just really bounce back, kind of get back to where they were in the Pac-12, where maybe they aren't winning the Pac-12 every year, but they're just a good team that's hard to play, usually finds itself in the top 25 at the end of the year. So I have Texas Tech and Utah as The top two most pressured teams in the tangible improvement is required category, followed by Arizona State and Kansas State in the compete for Big 12 title and finish ranked category. Then it's not so much of a power ranking list, because then you get to Arizona, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati in the you need to win to save your job. You may not need to compete for the conference championship, but you need to get to a bowl game at least. And if you don't, then there's going to be issues. Need to stay good: Baylor, TCU, Iowa State. Get to a bowl game: Kansas and Houston. And then no real pressure: BYU, Colorado, West Virginia, and UCF. So we'll see how this looks at the end of the year, but I think that this is kind of a good little snapshot into like where the fan base is feeling for each team, and what the general expectations are for each team entering the year. So that's my opinion on which Big 12 teams face the most pressure. All right. Thank you for watching and listening. We got a little bit to go before the season starts, but training camp has begun, and it's good to have some more tangible football things to talk about. The conference realignment stuff is mostly off to the side. We'll see how that famous last words, but the football is it is later this month, right? For any team, it's the last few days of August, and for a few teams, it's going to be on the 23rd, I believe, when they play in Ireland. So football season is very, very close, and we'll see how it all plays out. All right, thank you for watching and listening on YouTube and your podcast platform. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice, and as always, go Sun Devils.